Have you or do you know how to change your spark plugs and coil packs on your Audi 4-liter T FSI motor? I don't, but I'm hoping we can figure it out together. So this is how I did it. This looks like a nightmare of a job. I figured this would help give us the most exposure. So to identify where we're going to go with this, a lot of these wires are running underneath this plastic panel. We've got our coil packs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a ton of sensors for what looks like the cylinder deactivation, most likely. Could be wrong, but it's not important. They're getting unplugged. Okay, so here's what I'm going to try to do. We're going to try to expose this, this underneath the filter, or that panel. That's a pull clip. So I'm going to start moving some stuff out of the way, as you can see there, but we're going to try to get this off. So I'm going to mess around with this for a few minutes and see what, just to explain here how any of these tabs that you see that have this ejector tab on it, this just slides down, and once it slides down, that allows you then to get, and I don't know if you can see that really well, that allows you to get in there and unplug these things. So moving along fairly well there, but I'm going to try to unplug as many things as we can and get as many of them out of the way as possible, so we have a little bit of a more free working area. Now I don't know of these what I do and don't have to take off, but as I'm moving some stuff, I noticed that this cover is held on by an interference fit with a couple tabs here. So let me unplug some more stuff and check back in. Here's where we're at. So I've managed to get this cover plate off. That's what it looks like, and then from the inside you've got, well, let's look at it. This is how it sat on there. So on the bottom here, there's a tab here, 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 and here. How I was able to get these out is I just took some small angled pick tools and a screwdriver, and essentially what I did was slid this in there and ever so easily pulled this tab back to let it come over the notch. You can't really see the notch. I can get the camera in there and show it, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 right here. Once I was able to get this started, you just kind of slid the tool in and made your way down to pull this cover off. So the cover exposes all the bare wires now that we can see for everything. For what looks like these solenoids for the cylinder deactivation, our coil packs, which I've unplugged. Really, basically, I've unplugged almost anything that's in here, and it seems like this, excuse me, this plastic piece houses the wires and has them above the coil packs. So the coil packs are underneath here. It looks like we've got a vacuum line in here as well that I'm going to have to disconnect, and it appears in here, that's maybe a T30, that there's at least one nut. Looks like there should be another nut where my my pseudo pointer is here. But what looks like would probably make the most amount of sense, which is what I'm shooting for, is I want to pull as many of these wires out and out of the way as possible. A lot of zip ties and some other stuff in there, but want to expose these coil packs. So we've gotten the cover off by going and using our pick tool and coming in and getting around and taking the case off. And take your time. I was able to get through it, not break anything, and I've got meat sticks for hands, so just take your time, you should be good. And now we're going to try to navigate this little area right here. Here we go. So 30mm Torx pulled this out and right here. Then if you look back here, right here, there was a stud here that was underneath this, right? Moved that. The stud was right there. Took that out. It was a 10 millimeter. Right here, I moved this. Don't forget this. You're going to want to remember to put that back in. That's a ground strap for part of the wiring harness. The bolt right here is a T30. Be careful, because it will fall down there. Ask me how I know, if you're not careful. Also, you disconnected this line up here, which you have to, that comes all the way back to here. This goes to your wastegate. Kind of important stuff. Fought with getting that off for a while. It didn't want to easily come off, but when you do it right, all of this can pick up. Kind of maneuver it out of the way. I know I'm doing that with one hand and it's not going as well as I'd like to see it go there, but there. So that exposes all of this. Like I said, this little right down there is where I disconnected the vacuum line. So you got to be careful. But now we've got all our coil packs exposed and we can go and get to the next step. Looks like these are T30s. Pretty easy pulling out the coil packs, but we'll get to that. Here we are on the passenger side now. Getting ready to get in and replace the coil packs and spark plugs on this is obviously the passenger side here. So as you can see, it's still in the middle of upgrading our oil filter line kit for our turbos with the JH Motorsports serviceable turbo oil filter kit. We removed the prone to get clogged turbo filter screen, and so that's why some of the things are missing. Pretty positive nobody needed me to mock this up, but obviously you're going to need to remove your the air intake there. You could probably do this without moving the air box, but since I'm in a really good spot, I'm going to do that. Obviously this would be connected, but if this was connected here, I mean, you've got the core support up here. Some of these things are going to be a bit difficult to get to. Anyway, with the luxury of being in this position, and since this is a serviceable situation for me, I will get to what I'm going to do, and you know, maybe you decide to do it as well. So the air box, I'm just going to remove the whole air box. I've already done most of it. So down here, this is a squeeze type clip, right? You squeeze that, and it comes off the air box, right? And then once you've done that, right here, see if you can see it. It's just on these rubber pegs. So there's the air box. Air box has been removed and gives us a ton of room. You wouldn't easily be able to get to this because you're going to have the fender liner here. So if you wanted to remove the air box, you'd have to remove the belly pan. The fender liner's here. You could try to squeeze your hand up here and do that. But again, I mean, that's the benefit of us being in here and having all these things removed. I don't want to say it looks straightforward on this side, but first initial glance seems like we might be able to follow the same pattern that we did on the driver's side. Looks like here's the vacuum line again for our wastegate, so we're going to want to be careful not to do too much of that. The ground strap here for the harness appears to be here in the front, whereas over there was on the back. And it looks like the same construction as far as how this is mounted down. Going to do some more investigation and see. Looks like this is going to be a hot mess here, because I can see the one coil pack, I can see 2, 3, and it looks like the 4th coil pack is just squirreled in a way where, well, let's see how all this goes. So let's dig in there and start getting some of these clips and some of these things unplugged and see where we go. Here we are. We've been pulling same formula as on the other side. pull out all of the solenoid connections, remove them out of the way, slide your screwdriver or angle tool in, and then slowly pull down. Before, what I was doing was kind of prying back. I think the right formula is to sneak it in and then just slowly start sliding it down as you go and slightly pull up on it. Same kind of formula as I said that we had on the other side. Coil packs, getting these unplugged. We're going to expose these lines, disconnect this like I said, wastegate vacuum line. T30 here, with this removed out of the way. I'm going to have to see where else it's mounted. So let's disconnect a few more of these lines, check and see where it's mounted, and tackle that next step. So we're going to get into that right now. Here's what we ended up with. We went in, T30, another T30 hiding back here. Pull that out. Disconnected our vacuum line. And then every single one of the solenoids you're going to want to disconnect. So on the other side, back with the wastegate, the vacuum line with that didn't want to come off very easily. So at least in this step, I'm going to try to swing the harness as far out of the way as we can without disconnecting the wastegate line. So we've got it pretty well propped up there. Nothing's bending or twisting to any sort of degree I'd be worried. So coil pack 1, 2, 3. I feel like we're not going to have too big of a deal getting to those. The fourth one, we snuck our T30 in there on a little swivel head extension. Looked like we might have had enough room to get in there. Now, mind you, I would definitely suggest that you consider having a magnet ready, because if you have your belly pan on, you're going to be dropping, there's a good chance that you're going to potentially run into dropping some bolts. So I got that back screw, came out pretty good. I'm taking off this one coil pack just ahead of it, just to kind of get a feel for if I'm going to run into any problems getting the other coil pack out. Original part number. So we pulled the screw out. Yeah, all right. Well, oh, it's kind of a janky angle. I don't know. Getting it back in, I could probably force it back in. What did I have to do? How bad is that? Yeah. So I did find that there was a bolt there, and we probably could go and take that bolt out there in the back if we wanted. I'm going to kind of see how this goes as I continue to progress. Huh. This side looks a little bit better than the other side did so far, but that's just one plug. We'll continue pulling them out and see. Well, everything looks good there. We've pulled all of our stuff back. We've actually replaced some of the spark plugs in here. Kind of taking it for face value at this point that you probably know how to change spark plugs. But if not, once you take the bolt out, start working your coil pack back and forth a little bit, left and right. The reason you do this, you want to break the seal, but you don't necessarily want to pull right away. Sometimes the coil packs over time tend to heat cycle, and then the rubber boot on them breaks down. These came out relatively easy on mine, but mine is a low mileage car. Don't know if you can see this here, but on your coil packs, that's the manufacturer's date. So put that in the light there. That's the manufacturer's date. So that'll let you know whether these are have been replaced or not, and gives you an idea on maybe you don't need to replace your coil packs. Maybe you do. These are original. Most likely nothing wrong with them. I didn't see anything that was wrong with them overall, but just decided to replace them just the same. Here is the old spark plug. It was an NKG unit. I checked the gap on every plug that I pulled out, and they were all relatively the same, probably 26 to 28,000. If you don't know, this is a spark plug gapping tool. It gets bigger as it goes around, a little rudimentary. I think they recommend a loop gauge for this, but just checked them. They're all at 20. They're all have been really consistent. Before, I've been putting my plugs in. I haven't upped the gap or anything. I left or lowered the gap. I don't think there's really a need to. 26 to 28 is a pretty close gap already as it is. You didn't see me take the spark plug out because I wanted to show how to put it back in. A 5/8 tool, you want to make sure that there is a rubber stopper in your spark plug socket, and I'll tell you why. You don't want the spark plug to fall out. This is the business end of the spark plug, and if this gets hit or damaged, or the really small, you're probably not going to be able to see that, but the really small minute gap that's there, you don't want that to be compromised, because that's everything. So very simply, slide it in by hand and then just start working it. I've taken out all 4 coil packs and all 4 plugs. They all looked pretty good, but for having 60, almost 70,000 miles, the Audi recommends you change them at that point, and it looked like it was probably about time for them to get changed. In retrospect, could I have let them go further? Sure. Actually, they didn't look too terribly bad as far as plugs go. But the car's all stock. If you planned on adding some power or doing anything to it, definitely want to upgrade these. And both these units were NKG. Well, I'm not sure if this was NKG, but the plugs obviously NKG, Volkswagen, Audi Group. So I definitely 100% sure got NKG replacements. I actually got a race plug. I don't know. It just seemed like maybe a better way to go, since I'm going to be messing around trying to add some power to it. So that's how we take those out. And yeah, all right, on to the next step. Well, we got our spark plug in here. Took some time, pushed the hose back. Sure, maybe ideally it would, you might want to go and do more work. So we're going to keep moving. I'm pretty positive people know how to put spark plugs in, but at this point we're doing a how-to, so you might as well just keep going through the whole thing. You want to make sure when you put them in that you're threading them in by hand. Obviously, you keep them all in the tray. There's some dielectric grease I felt on the end, so be a little, I felt a little dielectric grease on the end, so be careful of that. I leave the sleeves on because, as I mentioned earlier, that's the business end of the spark plug. We checked all our gaps. These out of the box, these NKG plugs were really, I mean, I couldn't see really any difference. I did find one stock plug that seemed to have a little bit of a tighter gap. It didn't seem like the color of the burn of the plug looked any better because of it, so I don't see a reason to reduce the gap on the plugs because of it. Threading these in here, starting them by hand. Then obviously we're going to come back and we're going to tighten them to 20 foot-pounds or 25 Newton meters, whatever your torque wrench is set at. Alright, so now we're getting to the torquing part with our torque wrench, torquing them down to 25 Newton meters, or I have mine set to foot-pounds, which is, I think it's technically like 18 something, but I just set it to 20. I'm going to try to get to this last one and then start putting in the coil packs. All of our spark plugs torqued down, so now we're getting to the point to where we're going to start reinserting our coil packs. Pretty simple procedure. Straight in, straight down. Put your bolt in, put your bolt back. And we're going to continue on down the line putting in the coil packs. And the neat thing about this is these have the dates on them as well, Volkswagen Audi group on there, so we know it's the specific coil pack for our application, and that's the part number that I got it. And like I said, Volkswagen AG, all the part numbers and everything matched right up. We're just gonna be careful to drop this straight down. It's a pretty good interference fit, friction fit. Thread our coil pack bolt back in here and go ahead and tighten this down, and then we can start the reverse pattern of putting everything back together. So we got all our coil packs in. They're torqued down. Now comes the replacing, reinstalling of the wiring harness again. Being careful to watch all our connections, make sure everything lines up real good. So we've got our vacuum lines we got to be mindful of, and we've got to get these bolts back in for the wiring harness case. So that one's going to go in here loosely, just to kind of get everything started so we know where we're at. I'm being really careful on this back one. Man, these are real easy to drop, so take your time. Have a magnet handy, so if you don't get it the first time, you're not chasing underneath the car if you didn't already pull out the belly pan. So we've got to be careful getting these bolts back in. Take some time. Not a lot of room because we didn't move some of the stuff out of the way we could have. So I'm going to tighten the harness back down. I left the wastegate plugged in the back on this one. Here's where that's at. Going to reinstall our coil packs, listening for the click. There's one, two. Let's do this back one first here, and take a gander. Looks like I gotta plug in some of these harnesses here before we get too excited. That's plugged back in. Get this coil pack on here. There you go. Getting this coil pack in here. Sounds good. I'm going to drop back in our plugs here for these solenoids. Just to show you, if you can see on camera, these come out relatively easy. Just kind of move that out of the way. And I mean, all I'm doing is pushing down and pulling back. Now it won't go down right now because there's nothing in there putting tension on it. But I just really easily pulled my finger and pulled back. Some of these you're going to have to get in there with a clip. But if you got to get in there with a clip, you got to remember, you got to put that rear tension on it so it'll come out. Otherwise, you'll just be fighting with it. So, trying to be mindful of where all my plugs go here. That one looks like that goes there, and that goes there. Alright, so just gonna finish plugging in the rest of these solenoids here, back over here to the pump. This looks like this gets, these things right here look like they get reinstalled when we put our heat exchanger or intercooler back in. I left the nut or the bolt here so I wouldn't forget what bolt went to our ground strap. Do that last here. Plug back in our vacuum line for our wastegate, being mindful that this is pretty important. We want to make sure this gets a good seal right here. So probably going to put just a little bit of oil on that to help it slide in. It's under vacuum, so once it's slid in there, it should not have any issues. But give it a little bit extra ease to put it in, because there you go. Yeah, once these lines get a little bit, once they heat cycle a couple times, you're going to be fighting, and when it gets cold, it's not going to slide in and out. It's a vacuum situation, so the hose, you shouldn't have to put a clamp on it, and there wasn't one. So I think we're good there. We've got that in. I'm going to go ahead and drop in this this last bolt here for the ground strap on the wiring harness, and we're going to be on our way. Put that final tighten on that last ground screw. We're going to double check our coil packs, make sure they're all plugged in. Come back and double check all of your tabs. Make sure your tabs are pushed down and all of our stuff is reconnected. Tracing all the way back, because you know there's a certain number of solenoids, right? So follow the solenoids back for each cylinder. Make sure they're good. Everything's plugged in. Vacuum line put back on. Ground strap on. Looks like we're ready here. Just gonna recheck the wiring harness, make sure nothing got kinked or whatever. Got that. All these bolts are in and tight. I think we're ready to put our cover back on, and cover goes on just kind of in the opposite fashion you did before. So start at the back. And you just kind of hear it. There you go. Hear it click. Go to each spot, double check. So if you took the air box, obviously you're going to put the air box back in where it goes, hook all your plumbing back up, and for the most part that's it. Hop on over to the other side and get that side done. Okay, we've plugged in all of our sensors along the ways. Our coil packs are plugged in. Our Torx bolt and our stud have been reinstalled. We've pulled some of the things out of the way. Obviously the coil packs have been installed, our spark plugs have been installed, and here we go now. Now it's time to reinstall the cover. The orientation is this goes at the bottom, and it probably makes the most amount of sense to try to line these up. You can see there's rail grooves on here, so want to be careful that we make sure that lines up all the way down. So I'm going to try to carefully install this. Make sure we're moving around all of the... Feel like that's snapped in for the most part. Alright, looks good. So we've got that all lined back up and snapped back in. Double checking to see that all our plugs are in and everything is reattached, and